Invisible people see invisible things. A quote by Sarah Moore. Who are the people referred to as invisible? They're often homeless, addicts, or even just socially awkward. When people feel invisible, they may begin to do things to garner attention. We call these silent cries for help. But while the cries get louder and louder, the tears are ones no one can see, and the words seem to fall on deaf ears. April 21st, 1995. The world would make way for Ashley Ducille. She would be born to her parents Anthony Ducille and Avis Donald. The early years of Ashley's life are kind of blurry. Not much is known. You'll find out why later. What I can tell you about Ashley is early on her parents were split. They would both meet new people, and in return, she would have not only biological brothers and sisters, but a host of step-siblings as well. Ashley Ducille would have her upbringing in New York. She would also attend the New York public school system. Growing up, Ashley's immediate family didn't have much. There were no silver spoons inside of the drawers or satin sheets on the bed. But one thing she did have was family unity. After all, even a rich family with a full house that lacks love is still an empty home. Luckily, growing up, this wasn't the case for Ashley. She had loving parents, loving brothers and sisters. She was especially close with her mother, someone who pushed her to be better in every aspect of her life. As the saying goes, time waits for no man. The years would begin to fly, and she would say farewell to her high school years and greet the beginning of adulthood. Shortly after her high school years, she would welcome a first child. A man whom at this point we're going to leave unnamed. When she brought her child into this world, everything changed, but it wouldn't be her last. Let's fast forward to the year of 2018. Ashley Ducille is now 26 years old. Ashley now has 4 children with a man who does nothing. He sat around the house getting high, day in and day out. So, needless to say, he's not working. But Ashley is. At this point, she works at a senior care facility, taking care of the elderly. So, when she gets done doing her duties for the elderly, she then has to go home and tend to 4 children. Make that 5. 4 of her own children. And the man she had laid up in her home, that's just like another child. In their situation, Ashley learned to look past her boyfriend getting high all the time. In his defense, in the beginning, it was just weed, but that led to pills. And then one day, Ashley gets off work. She goes home to the apartment that they share in the Bronx. She puts her key in the door, and when she opens the door, her baby father is sitting on the couch with a glass pipe in his hand. In that instant, Ashley had had enough. She had seen all she needed to see. She decided right then and there that it was time for him to go. So she throws him out. But with that, life gets just a little bit harder. Because although at that point he was kind of worthless, at least he was a babysitter. She is now a single mother of 4 children. And life doesn't seem to be letting up anytime soon. The year of 2018 would greet 2019. And during this transition, things would change in Ashley. She would no longer be holding a steady job, and she began dating some suspect people. In 2019, she would meet a man, but things wouldn't change. It would be like deja vu all over again. This new guy was worthless and sat around getting high. But this time around was different because he wasn't doing it by himself. Ashley was now partaking. A home that was normally kept clean with a full fridge was now covered in filth with bare cupboards. At this point, her 4 children are living in unstable conditions. In fact, the conditions were so bad that it would be her own family who contacted Child Protection Services. The year of 2019 would be especially hard for Ashley because that would be the year she would lose her kids. She would be deemed unfit, and her children were now property of the state. Life for Ashley at this point is devastating. Although she made some bad choices, she loved her children, and she would maintain her visits. The year is now 2020, and Ashley Ducille is 28 years old. Life is the same for now. She visits with her children, but she's working towards getting them back. But in the year of 2020, trouble would arise again. In the month of September, she would lose her mother. For Ashley, this was devastating because her and her mother were close. But afterwards, she would go downhill even further. She would spiral into depression. She's now at the point where she feels all alone because her family isn't talking, her kids have been taken by the state, and now her mother is gone. With this being the case, Ashley would begin to use just a little bit more. At this point, Ashley has no desire to work a 9-to-5. She is now turned to the streets and dealing with Johns. The guy she had met after throwing out her baby father, well, he's still around, and things haven't changed. He's still getting high and periodically putting his hands on her. Her and her boyfriend at that time were no stranger to the authorities. They were at their home every other weekend for a domestic disturbance. Time continues to elapse, and the year is now 2021. Ashley Ducille is 29 years old. Life for Ashley is still hard, but she would find an escape on social media. She would often take to social media to either vent or just talk about what's going on, or even to give words of encouragement. Some people refer to this moment at her life as rock bottom, a place where you can't get any lower. She did, however, have one thing to look towards, and that's the visits with her children. October 31st, 2021, the day that is referred to as All Hallows Eve. Like normal, Ashley would show up to have her visitation with the children, and she would take them trick-or-treating. She would then drop them back off and head home. As she got in her car and began to drive off, I'm sure that it never crossed her mind that that would be the last time she ever saw her children. They had officially said their last goodbyes, and they didn't even know it. November 13th, 2021. Authorities would be dispatched to an apartment complex located off Creston Avenue in the Bronx, New York. The residence they're being dispatched to is none other than the home of Ashley. The authorities are on scene to do a welfare check that was requested by Ashley's downstairs neighbor. The authorities go to Ashley's home in order to conduct this welfare check, but when they knock on the door, they don't get an answer. But they also notice a foul odor, so they retrieve the property manager to gain entry into the home. And once inside, they would get more than they bargained for. They would discover the body of two deceased adults, a 29-year-old woman and a 40-year-old man. The 29-year-old woman would later be positively identified as Ashley Ducille. The authorities have identified Ashley, but they don't know what happened to her. Her body would be shipped off to the medical examiner's office in order to perform an autopsy, along with the 40-year-old male. Meanwhile, they're contacting family and friends, asking if they knew anyone that wanted to harm her. But no one knew anything, because again, at this point, they weren't in her life. Ashley was basically alone. Luckily for the authorities, in this case, it wouldn't take long to solve, because after the autopsies were conducted, it would conclude that Ashley Ducille suffered gunshot wounds. These injuries would be sustained in the head region, as well as the torso. As far as the 40-year-old male, well, it was determined that his wound was self-inflicted. That's right, he had taken the life of Ashley and then ended his own. The name of the 40-year-old male, who was also Ashley's boyfriend, his name was never released. In fact, After the media initially ran this story locally, no one ever said a word about it. The authorities did learn a little bit about the situation from the property manager, Ernesto Garcia. Ernesto Garcia told the authorities that Ashley had confided in him, let him know that if anything ever happened to her, that he did it. Now, Ernesto did know about the abuse. He knew about the drug use. He knew just about everything that went on in that household. Ernesto Garcia would tell the authorities that he was at her apartment every other weekend just to change the locks. She would put her boyfriend out and then let him back in. But despite Ashley telling him that she was in fear for her life, he never did anything. He didn't call the cops, and he didn't try to evict her. He never tried to solve the problem. Now, I have to put myself in his shoes because he was in between a rock and a hard place. By now, he's known Ashley for years. She's lived in that same apartment since the year of 2018. It was currently 2021. With Ashley being all alone, she confided in her property manager, but that would ultimately be her downfall. But it's the way that they found her that was completely heartbreaking. The downstairs neighbor that initially requested the welfare check did it for a reason. She requested this welfare check because maggots began crawling through her ceiling. When she got up in the morning and noticed that maggots were falling, she then recollected hearing gunshots weeks prior. She says that she heard the shots and then she heard a loud thud, but nothing ever came of it, so she just went on about her life.
Now to the Bronx, just a disturbing story. We are learning more about a gruesome scene police were called to over the weekend.
Yeah, the police say the badly decomposed bodies of a 40-year-old man and a 29-year-old woman were discovered inside an apartment along Creston Avenue, which is in the Fordham section. A downstairs neighbor tells us she called police to do a wellness check after she noticed maggots falling from her ceiling.
When I woke up, I found the living room full of worms. I called the super and told him what was happening. He said it was the woman upstairs who didn't throw the trash out. Then I remembered the shots I heard 2 weeks ago. We called the police.
When the autopsy was conducted on Ashley, the coroner concluded that she had laid inside of the apartment for 2 weeks, which explained why she showed up to the medical examiner's office in such a bad state. At the end of her life, Ashley had lost everything. She lost her children. She lost her mother. She then went through a Great Depression. But on top of all of that, she had a boyfriend who could care less. But to add insult to injury, when the coroner found that she had laid in the apartment for 2 weeks, that puts her time of death right after she left her children on Halloween night. As far as a motive in this case, I guess we'll never know, because the guy who was found alongside of her took that information with him. Now, I know that this case is a rough one. I know there's going to be people on one side of the fence and people on the other. I know some people can see a bad mother, someone who lost their children, who decided to do everything wrong in life. And the other can see the woman who constantly had fastballs thrown at her, someone who was merely trying to make it and then let love be her downfall. I'm not here to judge. I'm merely here to tell her story, because at the end of the day, no matter her life choices, she was human. She had a beating heart just like anyone else, but her heart was full of pain. Rest in peace, Ashley Ducille. Thank you for being a light for others.